And now it looks like, Tim, you want to talk about the progression of, let's see, the sun through Bible stories and Christianity. Maybe you could explain about that a bit more, Tim.
Okay, so apparently the person who took my call wasn't quite sure how to type it all out.
Sure.
Actually, it's the progression of the ages, progression of the sun through the ages. In other words, the zodiac, and its relationship to the stories of the Bible. And it really, what really struck me was the fact that when I looked at the progression of the sun into the age of Taurus, or into the age of, Aries, which is the ram, and the end of the age of Taurus, because the sun progresses opposite of what we progress through the year. We go Aries, Taurus, but the sun progresses Taurus, Aries. And so at the time of the age of Taurus, it was moving from the age of, forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but it would be Cancer. And so then we moved into the age of Taurus, but then we moved into the age of Aries. And at that time is the exact time of the supposed rise of Moses and the exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt into the land, into the promised land.
So if I could summarize, like, really shortly, what you're trying to get to is, do you think that there might be some sort of connection between biblical stories and like the astrological kind of elements to that?
Yes.
Okay.
And as I progress through this story, you'll find out. So, because I tend to get a little wordy, and I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so the story of Moses and the golden calf, so to speak, was the killing of the age of Taurus. What is Taurus? It's the bull. And then it is the coming of the age of Aries, which is the ram. What is the one thing that we really identify the Jewish faith with, but the ram's horn and the shofar and the blowing of the shofar during Rosh Hashanah? And then we fast forward a little bit, about 2,000 years, into the change from the age of Aries into the age of Pisces, which is fish. What is the one symbol that is represented by Jesus but the fish? So we are then moving from the age of the ram, the Aries, the shofar, into the fish, which is the ichthus, the very representation of Jesus. And Jesus was the last lamb slaughtered to end the age of Aries. And that is also, when you look at the entire story of the birth of Jesus as well as the death of Jesus, it is actually the sun god, the mythos of every religion within that region.
Every religion within that region.
Yes. Adonis, Bacchus, Dionysus, Osiris.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Tim.
Yes.
Do you think these signs were intentionally designed in the way that they were so that they could match up with these biblical stories, or was it the other way around?
I think the biblical stories were matched up with the signs. I think the stories were matched up and written because of the fact that within that region, all of these sun god mythos were written about the same time, if not even earlier, like thousands of years earlier. Well, hundreds of years earlier, anyway. To create, it was an anthropomorphication of what was going on within the skies.
Okay.
We were moving from the age of Aries into the age of Pisces, and the sun god mythos were created. That is Dionysus. That is Apollo.
Go ahead, Craig.
Go ahead.
So these ages, these are astrological, like in the 60s, that was supposed to be the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Why? So what's going on? It's an epoch, and it's what, 100 or so years, and it's just what matches that sign, sort of, that people are more inclined to be.
I'll ask this, just to kind of reorganize this conversation here on where I think we should go with this. I'll give you my thoughts first, and then I'd like to hear thoughts from Craig. I am immediately skeptical when people usually present to me ideas of kind of a syncretism of religion. This idea that all of these different religions can all be crammed together in some sort of way, or this was all kind of designed or all kind of inspired from the same sources, because I think, and for the most part, and I don't know if this is true with what you presented me here, Tymm, because I haven't looked into it, obviously, but for the most part, when I see these things, for example, when people are saying Jesus is actually Osiris from the Egyptian mythology and stuff, it's kind of BS. Like, if you look at the details of these things, it kind of doesn't work. And also, sometimes these cultures actually didn't have any interaction with each other and stuff. And I'm more willing to bet that different religions had different kind of coincidental religious ideas. I mean, we were talking earlier on the last call about people having these kind of universal experiences with the one true God or being of the universe. And that seems to crop up in a couple different kinds of religions. I don't think that all these necessarily have to be inspired by each other. I think people can independently come to these kinds of conclusions, especially when we're talking about something like the sun. You know, the sun is something that everybody sees. And I can very clearly see how people can kind of attribute different things to the sun and their own kind of cultures and religions, and these can kind of sometimes coincide with each other because we're all observing the sun and we're all observing its similar characteristics at different parts on Earth. What do you think about this idea, Craig?
Oh, and
did he go? Did he disappear? I'm not 100% sure what he was trying to say. I think he was. Whereas perennial philosophy is kind of like bottom down, like these people are having organic experiences that they're describing as religious or mystical in different places that have similarities. He seemed to be saying, as far as I could tell, I don't really know if this is what he meant, but that there was some sort of top down, like Osiris is Jesus matched with Dionysus because Jesus is like a completion of all these. I didn't quite get it, and I didn't quite get how it tied into the astrological eras.
I can explain.
I don't really understand.
Very simply, I can explain it by saying that people look at the progression of what is going on within the stars, within the movement of the sun, with the seasons of the earth, and they look at it and they anthropomorphize that. And they do that within their own certain regions.
For sure.
And the reasons why we have certain gods like Bacchus, Dionysus, Osiris, Jesus, is because they are looking at they're looking at the movement of the stars. They're looking at the progression, the precession of the sun through the ages. And yes, as far as the age of Aquarius, they were talking about the age of Aquarius in the 60s, but that's not when it happened. In fact, many people think that it happened somewhere between 2012 and will go into 2060. So it's where the sun is in the progression of the astrological sign.
Okay, Tim. Okay. Let me ask you this, Tim. If this is true and Christianity actually was built kind of around these astrological signs, I'm assuming Judaism is acting the same way. Why isn't this made explicitly clear within these religions? Why are no Christians today really actively promoting this belief? And why do I not see any really reference to the sun or like worship of the sun within biblical stories? Like obviously the sun is referenced, but never in I think the extreme religious significance that I think that you and maybe other people might give it.
Well, good question, and the answer to that would be the power and the money that's available by simply holding to these beliefs. The reason why Catholicism and thus Christianity throughout the ages, throughout the last 2,000 years, has been so strong is because the emperor at the time, Constantine, decided that, oh, hey, you know what? There's money to be had and there's control to be had if I go with this particular myth. Now, he already knew that it was a myth. There were already mythos involved with the sun gods that were very prevalent at that time. However, at that time, which was about 300 years after the time that Jesus was supposed to have been born, and only about 200 to 150 years after the first story had been written about Jesus, did it become a thing that would possibly become powerful and would give him more power, more money, more control over all of his subjects.
I'm kind of confused here, Tim. How does changing the history of Christianity from being about the sun to being about what it is now give Constantine more power over his kingdom?
All about dollars, Dan.
But how does that make him money? I'm kind of confused.
Because capitalize. Now he can cash. You just start thinking entrepreneurially.
But you can cash in with the sun stuff. There's people that do that with astrology right now.
But he can cash in even more now that he's got the son of God. See how it works?
Okay.
And then
got to think like capitalist. You got to think about money. Four-man atheist with integrity. It doesn't quite make sense. You're not thinking about capitalizing on the market.
Right.
Go. Yes. I mean, really what it's all about is the controllable who are ignorant. People didn't know things back then. It was you had to know how to read in order to be educated back then. And all you had to do was have the priests tell you what is true. And once you had the emperor telling the priests that they needed to say this to their subjects, then their subjects were absolutely under their own control.
I don't know if I'm buying this one, Tim. You know, I personally have done a lot of study on the history of Christianity as a religion, and I don't think there's any biblical scholarship that I know of that currently supports what you're talking about. Do you have any evidence that any of this ever occurred?
The Council of Nicaea.
What does the Council of Nicaea have to do with Emperor Constantine changing things from being about the sun to being about the Son of God? Okay,
so Constantine, it was not about the sun. It was all about moving it from Zeus, who frankly is a weather god, and Apollo, who frankly is a sun god, to only one god who is...
Wait, hold on. This happened at the Council of Nicaea?
Oh, all of this happened at the Council of Nicaea.
Okay, well, everything I've ever read about the Council of Nicaea has never told me that they're talking about moving Zeus and other gods into Christianity. I don't know about that one.
Well, what they were doing, why Constantine started the Council of Nicaea in the first place was to make Christianity the religion within the Roman Empire.
Yeah, I understand that much of it. I think for the most part, I agree with that statement. But I don't know of Emperor Constantine actually ever mandating any doctrine and specifically changing the religion himself to fit his needs. I'm sure that he had...
The classic story is that he had a conversion. He saw a cross in the sky, and he legitimately became a Christian. You're saying it's not true that he had some sort of far-reaching entrepreneurial scam where now he was going to... I don't know. I don't get how he capitalized on it, but...
Well, of course he capitalized on it because it is proven within history that he capitalized on it. The Roman Empire became bigger, and then after that came the Catholic Church that actually controlled most of the monarchy in Europe once Rome fell.
But that was like 1,000 years after Constantine, though.
It was actually, it was a little less than 1,000 years, but yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you still had the Christian church growing. You still had the Catholic. Let me put it this way: you still had Constantine's vision of what he wanted, which was you needed to believe in this Jesus who is now. I'm not saying that he purposely said, okay, we need to negate Zeus for this. However, if you look at the history, yes, in fact, he really did say we need to negate Zeus for Jesus.
I don't know, Tim. I don't know. I've read some history in my time. I haven't encountered that. I'm not convinced right now. I'm not saying that this isn't what actually happened. You could be totally right. But when we talk about this next time, and I hope that we can talk about this more because we do have to go to our next caller now. But maybe we could talk a little bit more about sources and how we are coming to these conclusions. Because I'll be honest with you, I've read a lot about this. I've